Hello from London. I quite often shoot videos on this channel against the background of my quite large collection of language learner books. And I've mentioned several times the idea of doing a bit of a bookshelf safari. So today I'm going to shoot the first one of what will be, if you like it, an occasional series. What I thought I'd do today would be to pull out 3 volumes and share them with you. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Dr. Gareth Popkins. Here on the channel we talk not only about my own language learning projects, but also there are reviews, tips and advice, interviews with inspiring language learners, and a bit of language related vlogging as well. So if you haven't yet subscribed for the vibe, please do, and you can get my free video training by following the link underneath this video. Now then, let's look along the shelves. The first book I'm going to talk about today is Langenscheid's Praktisches Lehrbuch Ungarisch. You can see here my old copy. It's a book that came out in 1977, but I have got the 1990 edition. I bought it actually the first time I was living in Freiburg in the southwest of Germany in 1990. It's a funny thing when you've spent 30 years or more like me as an adult independent language learner, the books that you've picked up also remind you of the history of your life. I was in Freiburg for 6 months, or 8 months I think, in 1990, just after the reunification of Germany. It was an exciting time to be in a lovely city, and I was in, full language learning mode. I was studying Russian history as a graduate student, living my life through the medium of German, which I'd recently learnt to a level of reasonable daily fluency, and eager to start learning other languages. Now, what can I say about this book? First of all, obviously, it's long out of print. I'm not sure whether Langenscheid even do their Praktisches Lehrbuch series anymore. But it appealed to me, and it appeals to me for several reasons. I think it's great to have one textbook, one self-study book, where you've got the whole language in terms of all the high-frequency patterns that you're going to need to get to a good upper intermediate level in one place, and also a core vocabulary. With typical sort of German self-confidence, ein Standardwerk für Anfänger, it says at the beginning there, at the front here. So a standard text for beginners. I put the old plastic, I just used a piece of plastic to put a cover on. I really like to look after my books. I don't actually like to write in them in pen either. I always annotate just in pencil. To me, scratching the cover, damaging the cover, or writing in ink in a book is a complete no-no. It's something I want to avoid. But going back to the structure of the chapters then, so you got an introductory conversation usually, which I think's the best thing to have, a dialogue, although occasionally there was a longer monologue or a text just for reading. Start with some input, and you also had with them audio. There were 2 cassettes, which I still have. There they are. So one could work with this using the audio to the full, using techniques like a lot of listening practice to start with, a bit of dictation, which I like to use. Then you've got the vocab listed, then you've got some grammar explanations, and then you've got a great number of exercises at the end. A huge number, actually. And they are self-correct exercises, which is something that I like. I know some learners find them boring. I don't. For me, it's a way of interacting with the language, and it helps me to remember the patterns and the vocab. Always writing by hand. It helps to keep me focused, helps my memory, I think. And of course, I had no other option back then anyway. Now, to do the self-corrections, you had to buy a separate answer book, which is here. That's the Schlüssel zu den Übungen. And so actually, you had to fork out not only for the book itself, but the answer book and the tape. So nice work if you can get it, Langenscheid. Well done. The other thing I want to say about this, and you'll obviously have noticed, is that I'm learning Hungarian here through the medium of German. Some people call this laddering, when you're going to one language through another language. And for me, that was a way of reinforcing my German, practicing it, killing 2 birds with 1 stone, if you like. I also just thought this was the most accessible and thorough book on the market at the time, in English or in German. And my German was good enough that I don't feel that it got in the way of my learning practice. One of the things I did with all the vocab in here was to make small paper flashcards to learn it. And yes, it's a systematic approach to getting the basic scaffolding of the language in my head, the core patterns and structures, and the most frequently occurring vocabulary. Although I do remember that the choice of some of the words was slightly odd. For example, I can remember that they didn't seem to teach you the days of the week for some bizarre reason in this book. Quite grammar heavy, actually, quite explanation heavy, but for me that works well for a language like Hungarian, where the patterns are quite complicated, and it's helpful to my mind to have them explained and to practice them a lot at the beginning. The final interesting thing about this one, of course, is that it was out of date. It had just become out of date by 1990 as I started using it, because the scenarios and some of the vocab reflected communist Hungary. And some of the descriptions about the country as well reflected a Hungary which had just disappeared at that time. Moving to the second volume, and this is Charvervai by D. Geraint Lewis. This is a checklist of Welsh verbs, with some of the most frequent ones or the few irregulars. There are only 6 irregular verbs in Welsh and their compounds, listed in all the different tenses in Welsh. What can I say about this? The thing I want to say about this is that I've hardly used this book at all. No offence intended, D. Geraint Lewis. And it's not because there's something wrong with it as such, but that I just don't really get the concept. There's a series, isn't there, 501 verbs from another publisher which covers a lot of the big languages. Many publishers actually have come out with verb conjugators, and of course you can find the equivalent online these days. I just don't see the point. It seems to offer a sort of comprehensive overview. It's no good really for learning anything. It could be useful as a reference work. But again, if you've understood the principles of how the conjugation works and any stem changes, there will be regularities there, or totally irregular verbs which you just have to learn, I don't see the point. Do you use verb conjugation books like this? If so, why? Let me know. The third book today is one that I used when I was doing my C1 level, the TRKI 3 Third Certificate Advanced Russian exam. It's Mirolia Luder. And this is a straight textbook, basically. It's difficult to find materials in any language once you move to the higher echelons, or it becomes more difficult because I guess the market is smaller. And in Russian in particular, there are only a handful of books that you can use at the C level with the language. And this, I think, is the most vibrant, the most up-to-date, and is a really, really interesting volume in terms of some of the content that it has. With Russian textbooks, I find that the topics can often be a bit hackneyed, and this is not the case with this one. The Zlatoust publisher in St. Petersburg is the publisher, and that's a publisher that produces almost the majority, it seems to me, of Russian textbooks and learner materials that are available out there. Well worth visiting their website if you're a Russian learner, whatever level you're at. And the volumes can be ordered from suppliers outside Russia as well. A key thing with this, and something which is hard to find often in Russian published books, it's not always the case, is that I've got a key to the exercises in there too. There's no audio with this one. This one actually focuses on writing and speaking, but there is a second volume which covers listening and reading, the listening and reading parts of the exam. So lots of explanations in there, different topics as well, as I say, self-correct, and some of the patterns you might need for the writing part of the exam as well. Now, do you like to use textbooks when you get to an advanced level with a language? I still think there's a place for them because they will remind you of some of the basics. They give you a framework to work with. and something to structure your progress round as you move through, or you dip in and dip out. And they're a source of reference too. You can see mine's well used with all the stickers there, and it's something I just don't feel you grow out of, even as you become you know, an advanced, or at least a lower advanced learner. By the time you're moving to the C2 level, I think you're going to be looking at native level reference materials, grammars and so on if you need them. Of course, it's not enough just to have a textbook at any level, and particularly at this level. And the main things I was doing to practice for my C1 Russian exam were getting a lot of practice listening, speaking and writing. But this textbook provided material to discuss with my teacher too, and chances to practice my writing. So that's it for the first bookshelf safari. What do you think of this format? Would you like to see more of these? Would you like the format to change somehow? Let me know in the comments below. Maybe share with me your experiences and thoughts on these types of books. Textbooks, learning through a third language, and then the verb conjugation reference books. What do you think? I can't wait to find out. As always, thanks a lot for watching, and if you haven't yet, subscribe for the vibe, please do. Think about a thumbs up, tickle that bell, and share the affair. See you next time.